Let us now put our palms together to invite Ajahn Brahmali to conduct the Sutta classes. Over to you, Ajahn.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bobby, for that your kind invitation and for being there. And it's nice to be with you again at the BGF. It has been a bit difficult because of the pandemic recently, and I was really hoping this year to be able to come in person, because in many ways it's nicer to be there in person and to be able to see you all, because you have, I think the contact you have when you are face to face is often more powerful and more effective and more inspiring than being so far away. But there are some advantages with Zoom as well. One of the great things with Zoom is that you can have lots of people coming. You're not limited to space, which is a wonderful thing here. But anyway, it's very nice to be able to be with you again and to be able to do some more Dhamma teachings, because it is inspiring for everyone. And one of the main reasons I like to do these things is because I also feel inspired by these teachings. So in the sense, it is a privilege to be able to teach and to be able to take part in these things, because I think everyone benefits, and not least the speaker also benefits a lot. So hopefully it will be a marvelous and a fruitful Sutta retreat. We'll see how things go as we go along here. And the idea with these Sutta retreats is always to go back to the word of the Buddha, go back to what the Buddha himself taught, and looking at this from a variety of different angles. One of the things that always strikes me when I look at the Buddhist world is how much contradiction there is in teachings, and how often there is disagreements about what the Dhamma is really about. And you have all the various schools of Buddhism, all the various meditation schools that come out of places like Myanmar. You have the Mahayana Buddhism, of course, and all of these things. And in the end, if you want to have a clarity about what Buddhism really is about, the only way to get that clarity is to go back to the word of the Buddha. It's the only thing that we all have in common. So for this reason, I always like to do that, because I think this is the standard by which all the rest of Buddhism should be measured. It should be measured against the early suttas. So if you understand the suttas, then you have a foundation for also knowing how to do the practice, instead of just listening to contemporary teachers. So that is why I like to do this, and it is kind of surprising, because even in an area, this particular meditation, this particular retreat is going to be focused on how the Buddha teaches meditation. And you might be surprised to hear that many of the ways that meditation is taught in the contemporary world, various places, is often not quite aligned with the sutta. Sometimes it is going a little bit in a different direction. And because of that, when we come back to the suttas, we can kind of iron out some of the problems with the way meditation is understood. And by doing that, we can improve our own practice, of course, because the whole point of this at the end of the day is how it leads to a practical application. It's about, how we're going to live our life as Buddhists, how we're going to improve in our meditation practice. That is ultimately the purpose of this. It is not just to have some kind of theoretical understanding, but it's actually real. This is real life. This is about how we do the Buddhist practice. So it matters. It matters that we get it right. It is so common in the Buddhist world, wherever you go, that people do meditation practice sometimes for years, and sometimes they don't make any progress. And the reason why that is the case, there's two reasons. One is that they don't fully understand how you are supposed to practice. They don't really grasp some of the fundamental ideas of Buddhist meditation. This is one reason. And another reason is that when they do understand them, they don't apply themselves quite in the right way. These are the two issues. So by clarifying how we're supposed to do this and then applying this in the right way, there's almost guaranteed that you're going to make progress in your meditation. And even if you don't make progress in your meditation, you will make progress in your life. Yeah, your life is going to become better. You're going to become a more contented and more happy person. So either way, it's going to be a win-win situation. So this is just a little bit of the background to these kind of retreats. And every day we're going to start out with some meditation practice, just to make sure that we are ready for the Dhamma teachings, to kind of calm down, and also to ensure that we do the practical side. We don't just get too caught up with the theory. We actually do some practical application as well. And then there is, like Bobby said, there's going to be a 5-minute break between every 45 minutes. There's going to be a 5-minute break, and you can use that as you like. But if you don't have anything in particular that you need to do, just sit back and do some meditation for 5 minutes every 45 minutes. Because if you do a little bit of meditation for, every now and again, you allow the teachings to sink in. You gain a bit of clarity of mind again, and this kind of helps you to sustain. It's quite a long day, starting at 8 a.m. and then going till almost 6 p.m. It's a long day. So we need a bit of breaks in between to be able to sustain all of this. So this is kind of the idea behind this here. So just to start out, I thought I would just say a very few words about meditation practice. I'm not going to go long, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, just very, very brief before we actually do some meditation. So just to come back to some of the very basic ideas, this is largely going to be a sutta retreat, so meditation will not be the main focus, but still it is good to kind of at least get something out of the meditation. And there's 2 main principles of meditation that I want to focus on. And these are principles that we're going to see later on as we go through the suttas. I'm going to point it out to you as we go through the Anapanasati Sutta, as we go through the Satipatthana Sutta, what these principles, how they are found in the suttas. The idea is to bring everything back to the suttas. And these 2 things that are like the main guidelines or the main ways of knowing that your meditation is going well, heading in the right direction, 2 main aspects of meditation practice, how we should experience meditation. On the one hand is the degree of peace that you have in your meditation, and the other hand is a degree of happiness or well-being or contentment or satisfaction that you have. And both of these should increase and should improve as you do your meditation practice. You should be experiencing more and more well-being. You should be experiencing deeper states of peace. That's the whole purpose of meditation. So you measure your meditation by these things. And even if you are just reducing your suffering a little bit, you're feeling a bit more at ease and a bit more relaxed, that is already kind of the idea of heading. You're already heading in the right direction, because that is just another way of thinking about happiness. Reduction in suffering means more happiness. More happiness means a reduction in suffering. So these things go together. So to be able to do this, to be able to find that peace and ease of meditation, first of all, to start with the peaceful side of meditation. Peace happens when the world around us fades away. You have in the Eightfold Path, you have the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path is the Samma Sankappa, right intention. And the first one of right, there's 3 kinds of right intention. The first one is the Nekamma Sankappa, the intention to renounce. And the intention to renounce in meditation just means that you let go of the world a little bit. It's like you allow the world to fade away. And when you allow the world to fade away, that is where you become peaceful. Because allowing the world to fade away is the opposite of craving. It's allowing things to become peaceful in your life. And the way to allow the world to fade away is just by relaxing, by enjoying what you're doing, by sitting back, not by doing your meditation, but allowing the meditation to happen. And as you do that, you actually start to find that the world does really fade away. But by trying to do the meditation, you're just doing more of the same that we always do, which is trying to create things in the world. When you allow the world to fade away, not doing anything in meditation, that is where peace starts to happen. And it can be very useful to have some ideas of how to do this, because the idea of just being still and not doing anything is very counter to what we are like as human beings. Human beings, we like to do things, we like to create, we like to get involved in the world. And the ability to sit back and just allow things to be and just to enjoy is actually quite difficult. So one way of thinking of that is to think of yourself, this is kind of just a simile that I use for how to be able to relax. And a way of thinking about this is to think about what you do when you come home from work. You had a long day's work and you're really tired or been doing something. What do you do when you are really tired? When you have worked really hard, your mind is exhausted. And what you do is you may sit back in a nice chair, really relaxing in a nice chair. And then as you sit in a nice chair, you just close your eyes, you lean back, and you just take a deep breath. And what do? You don't do anything, right? Because when you are really tired, you don't want to do anything here. You just want to relax. So that idea of just sitting back and relaxing when you're tired, that is a little bit like meditation practice. Because the idea is to do almost nothing here and then allow the mind to just be guided by the Dhamma and then moving on to the breath or moving on to your meditation object as a consequence. So try to move back a little bit, to let go a little bit more of the world, to allow the world to be here. Remember that the world outside is always out of control. The world outside isn't all that interesting here. What is interesting is the spiritual practice, the spiritual path, because that is where we actually create something really useful. So that is the idea of peace, the idea of letting go of things, which is kind of fundamental to meditation practice. But the other side of meditation is the side of happiness that I just mentioned before. And this is the idea when we start out our meditation is to put our mind onto something which is you feel good about, something which is uplifting, something which is inspiring, something that may give you a little bit of joy. At the very least, you have to let go of any kind of negative feelings that you have as you start out your meditation practice. So this is then the second aspect. So a very important part of the meditation is this ability to bring that positive energy inside. And this can be done in so many different ways. It can be done by reflecting how fortunate you are to be part of a wonderful Buddhist community, so many supportive people. You have the BGF in Malaysia, wherever you are in the world. I'm not sure if all of you are BGF members, probably not. When you are part of this wonderful supportive Buddhist network, something that uplifts you, something that makes you feel, helps you forward in life, allows you to see things in a new way, understand life through new glasses, understanding what is actually going on, how to live better. What a wonderful thing it is to have such Kalyana Mittas in the world. And then, of course, you have the Sangha, you have the word of the Buddha. All of these things coming together is very powerful and very beautiful. So in this way, you can inspire yourself, or you can think about how you have lived your life. You have lived your life well, and because of that, you have this wonderful opportunity to practice well and to think back on your life. You know you have lived well, and you feel inspired by these things. You feel inspired by the suttas. You feel inspired by the Buddha. You feel inspired by some act of kindness that you have done in the past. So these are little ways, of kind of giving a boost in your meditation practice. So when you start your meditation, these are the two things that you should start out with. Allow yourself to relax. Allow yourself to let go of the world a little bit, to leave the world behind. And then also gently nudge your mind in the direction of a little bit of joy, a little bit of happiness. And then when that is kind of established at the very beginning, then you can allow the process to happen by itself, allow the meditation to deepen, gradually becoming more and more powerful. So this is the theory of meditation practice. So let's see what happens. Theory is only theory, so let's try and see what happens in real life. So let's do a little bit of meditation together, and then we'll come back to the suttas in about 40 minutes or so. And as you allow the meditation to progress by itself, make sure that you are patient. Patience is the fastest way of meditation practice, just allowing things to be, not getting involved in the content of your mind, but gradually allowing things to fade away. And it's very important here to enjoy the peace and to notice how much more beautiful the peace is than the world outside, how noisy the world outside is, how it tends to disturb you. And now finally, in meditation, you can find a real peace and letting go. Okay, everyone, that's the end of the meditation for now. Okay, so we can start with the suttas and see how we go. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the idea here is to understand meditation practice from the point of the view of the Buddha. And there is lots of interesting material in the suttas specifically about meditation practice. So I wanted to draw all of that together. And of course, we're going to look at the big suttas of meditation. Yeah, the suttas such as the Anapanasati Sutta, the Satipatthana Sutta. These are the core meditation suttas. But I also want to look at some suttas that are more, if you like, preliminary, that kind of get us started in meditation, how it all builds up from the beginning, and then we move on to the core suttas later on. And this is one of the, I think, important things about meditation practice, is that it is like a stage-wise process. There are certain things that we have to do to start out, certain things that belong to the beginning, how we prepare our mind, how we get ready for meditation. Because if we don't prepare the mind in the right way, then meditation becomes basically impossible. You try to watch the breath doesn't really want to stay with you, the breath tries to run away, or you try to run away from the breath, or whatever it is. And it's very hard because the mind isn't really ready for the meditation practice. So a lot of the ideas that I'm going to talk about at the beginning is how to get ready for meditation. And what is interesting about this idea of being ready for meditation is that a large part of that is about right view. It's about looking at the world in the right way. And the more we look at the world in the right way, the more the mind will generally go towards the peace, it will go towards the happiness, it will go towards the enjoyment, it will go towards the letting go. Yeah, letting go comes from right view, really. So if you look at the world in the right way, then things happen almost automatically. Yeah. And we can know that that is true. And the reason we can know that that is true is that, the way the Buddha speaks about a stream enterer, for example, the famous Sotapanna in the suttas, the stream enterer is someone who achieves meditation easily. For the stream enterer, the samadhi, the deep stages of meditation, they're always there, very close by, easy at hand. Why is that the case? Why is it the case that stream entry allows you to meditate deeply almost every time you sit down? And the reason is because you have right view. You're looking at the world in the right way. You know where to find happiness and where suffering is to be found. And this is one of the basic definitions of right view, is the idea that right view tells you where happiness is and where suffering is. That's a very interesting idea when you consider it. Yeah, the idea that right view is really about understanding happiness and suffering. And so when you have right view, you know exactly what you have to do to go towards happiness, and you know exactly what you have to do to avoid suffering. If you haven't got right view, you don't really understand that. It's a very powerful insight. And of course, in a way, you know that that is true. This is what the Four Noble Truths are about. The Four Noble Truths, they start out with the idea of dukkha, of suffering. And of course, if you understand dukkha, if you understand suffering, you also understand happiness. You understand sukha, the opposite of dukkha. These things always go together here. Yeah? So if you understand where happiness is to be found and where suffering is found, the mind will go towards the happiness. Yeah? So the idea here is, if you understand that the world outside is not that interesting, if you understand that the world of the five senses is inherently problematic, there's too many wars, there's too many problems in that world, there's too much climate change, there's too many pandemics, there's too many natural disasters, there's too many refugee crises happening around the world. That world is always kind of problematic. And when you start to understand that in a deep way, it's like you withdraw your attention from that world, and you understand that the world within, that is where you can find the real happiness instead. So by understanding happiness and suffering, this very fundamental idea, this fundamental aspect of right view, actually the mind is guided by itself. The mind automatically goes towards the happiness and avoids the suffering. So right view is foundational for meditation practice. The more powerful your right view is, the easier meditation is going to be for you. So right view is always a very good place to start. So some of the suttas we're going to have a look at now are in large part about this idea of right view, how to think about the world in the right way. And then when we think about the world in the right way, and we combine that with the ethics, the kindness in our life, the sila in our life, these two things together are extraordinarily powerful, sila and right view. And when you put sila and right view together, what happens is meditation. Meditation is the outcome of sila and right view. And that is why the stream enterer can meditate so easily, because they have sila and they have right view. Both of these things are perfected in the stream enterer. And because they are perfected, the stream enterer, poof, goes into meditation. Close the eyes and just needs to relax a little bit. Even the stream enterer need to relax a little bit. They may be tired. They may be nodding even in the beginning. But then soon enough, the energy comes back. And then when the energy comes back, then meditation happens. And I've always been interested. I'm very kind of close to Ajahn Brahm in many ways, because we live in the same monastery, we sit next to each other. And these days, Ajahn Brahm sometimes talks about the default of the mind. The default is like the automatic place where you go. It's like when you have like a default in a computer program, it is the automatic settings that kind of come with the computer program. You go back to the default, you go back to the standard settings, if you like. And Ajahn Brahm says meditation is a bit like that. He says there is a default in the mind. Someone who is very wise, very skilled meditator, that default is always present. And then when you go back and you sit down, the mind goes to the default. You become peaceful almost straight away, because you know where that peace is to be found. You know how to deal with it in the right way. And this is the power of insight, the power of understanding here. And our job as meditators is to approximate that, move towards that, so we also can have more of that default in our life, where the mind automatically goes towards peace, goes toward quiet, and enjoys that as a consequence. This is what we're trying to achieve, and right view is a big part of that. So you want to try to understand a bit more about right view now. So let's see. Let's have a look at these suttas. So how do we do with the suttas, Bobby? Do you want to show them on the screen, or how's it gonna work?
Ajahn, Brother Lai will be sharing screen. So you go ahead with the suttas, and he will follow you.
He will be going through this. Okay, so we can start. Let's have a look now at the first sutta then, which is called One Fine Night. So starting, that's great. So this is the beginning of this, and you can take it up to the beginning of the sutta, Lai, and we will just take everything, stage all the bits and pieces. So this is this particular sutta is translated here as One Fine Night, and the Pali word for this sutta, the Pali name, is the Eka Ratta Sutta. And you may have heard of this sutta before. It's also called One Fortunate Night or One Auspicious Night and these kind of things. Baddha means auspicious in Pali, and Eka is one, Ratta is night. So it's one auspicious night. And this is a important sutta in the Pali canon. It is important because it occurs 4 times. It is found here, as you can see. MN 131 means the middle-length sayings of the Buddha, number 131. And so it occurs 4 times. And when a sutta occurs so many times in slightly different ways, it is like a core aspect in a sense. It's an important aspect of the Buddha's teachings. And what this sutta is about, it is basically about, it's a verse way of thinking about meditation. It's a versified way, and verse is very often used by the Buddha to inspire people, to kind of get them on the right track. Verse is not the most powerful, maybe, way of presenting the Dhamma, because if you want to present the Dhamma clearly, verse can be a hindrance, because verse has a certain constrictions to it. So if you want to present the Dhamma in a very clear way, then usually prose is better. But what you will find here is that verse can be very inspiring, and these particular verses that you find here are kind of inspirational way of thinking about meditation practice. The Eka Ratta Sutta. It also exists in Chinese translation as well. That is always one of the things to look out for, whether these suttas exist in other parts of Buddhism, and if they do, then you know that they are more likely to be original and real suttas as a consequence. So this is a very, for this reason, very foundational and basic idea of thinking about meditation practice. So I will read it out, and I will comment on this as I read this out. So I have heard. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. There the Buddha addressed the monastics. Monastics, Venerable Sir, they replied, the Buddha said this. So here we have the Buddha, again, as always, the suttas begin with, thus have I heard. And this reminds us that this is an oral tradition. This comes and has been passed down through generations, and this has been orally delivered from one generation to the next one. And here you find, as you very often do, you find the Buddha staying at Savatthi, Savatthi being the great capital of the Kosalan kingdom. The empire was a very large country in northern India at that time. And because Savatthi was the capital, it was also the place where they had one of the largest Buddhist monasteries in ancient India. And this monastery is called Anathapindika's monastery. Anathapindika, as many of you will know, of course, one of the great donors to Buddhism in ancient India. He started this monastery, and there's a very famous story of Anathapindika that you can find in the Vinaya Pitaka, and maybe one day we can have a look at that story. And then the Buddha speaks to the monks. Yeah, he says mendicants, and this is quite interesting, the way the Buddha, where sometimes he will give a discourse without being asked any question. Yeah, he would just talk on his own, coming from himself, and this is what he is doing here. And then he says, I shall teach you the passage for recitation and the analysis of one fine night. Listen, pay close attention, I will speak. And this is the way the Buddha often starts off when he says that he's going to give a teaching. Yeah, he says, listen, pay close attention, I will speak. It's almost as if he is getting ready. He's kind of saying, now the Dhamma is going to come. And if the Dhamma is going to come, it is really worthwhile to listen and to pay attention to what is going on here. And we find this in the suttas in so many places. If you are able to really pay attention to what is going on here, if you're able to listen to the Dhamma, that is where the inspiration often arises. Yeah, you pay close attention to these words, you allow them to go in deep, you remember them for the future, you draw out the meaning of what often is a very succinct and short expression of the Dhamma. And by doing that, by coming close to the Dhamma in this way, it allows you to practice these teachings very powerfully. So the Buddha always reminds the monks, yeah, listen, pay attention. This is important. Your life depends on what I'm going to say here. Yeah, this is kind of fascinating. Your life depends on what, he doesn't actually say this literally, but that is kind of the implied statement, because our life is really about finding happiness in the world, finding an overcoming of suffering. So if you're going to have a meaningful life, it depends precisely on being able to listen to the Dhamma in this way. So listen, yeah, put aside what you're doing. Don't think about the future. Don't think about the past. Don't fantasize about anything. Just close your eyes. And this is why very often we close our eyes when we listen to a Dhamma talk, because when you close your eyes, it's like you're shutting out things of the world. It allows you to take in what is going on. Yeah, it becomes more powerful in that way. It's like a message that is supposed to go to the heart in a deep way, and then it becomes powerful. Listen, pay close attention, I will speak. And what he is going to speak on, he says here, it is the passage for recitation. It is called an udesa in Pali. And then he's going to give the analysis. And the analysis here is called the vibhanga. Vibhanga, and this is a very standard way for the Buddha to present the Dhamma. He gives, first of all, a short passage, a short kind of summary of the teaching, and then he analyzes the teaching afterwards. He kind of pulls it apart and says, this is actually what it means. And this is a very skillful way of thinking about the Dhamma, because on the one hand, you remember the core passage, and then you remember the commentary, the way to understand it afterwards. So we're going to do the same thing today. We're going to follow the Buddha's idea on this, and we're going to look at the short passage, and we're going to analyze it. We're going to analyze it even more detail, because that's why I'm here. I'm here to analyze things even more. Otherwise, I would be superfluous. Yeah, wouldn't be any point in having me unless I analyze it a little bit more. So that's why I'm here, to add a little bit of extra analysis. Of course, my analysis is not so important. Yeah, it is the word of the Buddha is far more important. But to bring out the meaning, it is useful to go through this process of analysis. So now let us come to the real verses here. Yeah, yes, sir, the monks replied, and the Buddha said this: don't run back to the past. Don't hope for the future. What's past is left behind. The future has not arrived. And phenomena in the present are clearly seen in every case. Knowing this, foster it, unfaltering, unshakable. Today is the day to keenly work. Who knows, tomorrow may bring death. For there is no bargaining to be struck with death and his mighty hordes. The peaceful sage explained, it's those who keenly meditate like this, tireless all night and day, who truly have that one fine night. So that is the verses of the Bhaddekaratta Sutta, very famous verses. And it is said elsewhere that these verses have to do with the very foundation of the spiritual life. So these are very fundamental for understanding what the spiritual life is about. Lai, if we could please go back to the beginning of the verse again, please. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So the Buddha starts off, and this is a very kind of common theme in Buddhism, yeah, and this is where that theme comes from, the idea of giving up the past and giving up the future. And if you hear any kind of Dhamma talk, or you hear any kind of instruction for meditation practice, it will often be said that the past and the future, you have to give it up. You can come into the present. Yes, this is a very standard thing. Yeah? And I remember when I was still starting out in my monastic life, and Ajahn Brahm was my teacher. I came to Australia all the way from Norway just to take Ajahn Brahm as my teacher. So I felt very sure that that was the right move, in a sense. And Ajahn Brahm had this beautiful idea of the past and the future being like a heavy luggage that we're always carrying with us. In the right hand, you have a suitcase of the past, and then in your left hand, you have the suitcase of the future, and you carry these around you as if you're burdened with something. Your mind is heavy because you have all of these things with you. And when you let go of these burdens, this is what the past and the future are. When you let go of them, the mind feels light. The mind feels kind of buoyant. It feels easy. And you will have, I'm sure you will have noticed that in your own meditation. When finally you're able to let go of the past and the future a little bit, you come to the present and you just sit back and you relax in the present. There's something very delightful about that. And of course, one of the main reasons is because you let go of this great burden of the past and the future. So the question then is, well, if these things are such burdens and we should let go of them, how exactly do we do that? It's easy to say, right? It's very easy to say, let go of the past and the future. There's no point in having them. And then you close your eyes, and then the past and the future are there. You can't let go of them. If they are so bad, if they are so destructive for meditation practice, why is it the case that we can't let go of these things? What is the problem? And of course, the reason is very simple. The reason why we cannot let go of these things is basically because of attachments. It's because of our interest in that sensory world, because that sensory world somehow gives us a sense that this is what our life is all about. Our life is about the sensory world. And because our life is about the sensory world, we think about that world, and that world exists to a very large extent in the past and the future. So what can we do? And this is where this idea of right view comes in. The way of thinking about the world in the right way. And if we think about the world in the right way, then actually the letting go of these things happens almost as a matter of course. It's like a default thing, like Ajahn Brahm was saying. The thing is just thrown out. So what is the right way of thinking about this? So let me say, first of all, a little bit about how to avoid thinking about the future. And I have been teaching this recently, and maybe some of you have heard this because I've been talking about this in other places as well. So the way to let go of the future, the way to think about this, and as a source for understanding this, I'm going to, just a very little anecdote that I came across recently. And this is in connection with the war in Ukraine. It's very useful to think about things that are real. Yeah, the war in Ukraine affects all of us. So it's very handy to kind of think of that war a little bit. And in this war in Ukraine, what we find is that many people are suffering. Yeah, when there is war, people suffer. That is what you have to expect. And sometimes you can interview these people, and some of these people were interviewed because they were journalists in Ukraine, risking their life to be able to write stories about what is happening. And one of these was a lady, I think it was a young woman or something like that, or maybe someone was interviewed. I think it was a young woman. And she was asked, how do you feel about this war going on? Yeah, what is your reaction to these things? And she was very distraught. She was very upset about this war going on in her country. And she was saying, they are destroying my future. My future is being destroyed. Here are these people invading our country, yeah, and bombing us, destroying our families, destroying our homes. Her house had been demolished by some kind of explosion or something. Family members are dying. The local community is being destroyed. Yeah, all the buildings, all the infrastructure that is there, the people who are coming together, everything is being destroyed. Our society isn't working anymore. What's going to happen to me? My future is being destroyed. And the interesting thing is you can see why she is saying that. Yeah, you can understand why. It's a natural reaction. Yeah, my future is being destroyed. You cannot see any way out of this anymore. What is the way out when everything around you is crumbling and people are dying? It's very difficult to deal with. So you can understand what she is talking about. But the interesting thing is that from a Buddhist point of view, she is actually wrong. Her future is not being destroyed because the problem is that she is misunderstanding where to actually find the future. The future is not found in the world around us. This is not really how we build our future. Yeah, usually, very often, unfortunately, we think that our future is about where the world is heading. Are we able to solve the problems in the world? Are we able to have less wars and less problems, less pandemics, less climate change? Are we able to have more happiness and joy by having a better food supply, getting more sensory pleasures in our life? And as long as we can control the world to create more of this, yeah, more iPhones, yeah, if everyone can have an iPhone, then we will be really, really happy, right? No, wrong. If everyone has an iPhone, we'd be even more miserable because iPhones just make you miserable. iPhones just cause even more restlessness and all kind of things, yeah, and there's kind of no end to it. But we think that if we can sort out this world in a certain way, then we will find happiness in the future. But it is wrong. The world outside only contributes a very small part to our happiness. The world outside is not that important. This young lady, once the shock of war has happened, maybe she flees from Ukraine, maybe she goes to another country in Europe, maybe to Germany, which is close by, or Poland or whatever. She reestablishes her life. Maybe she gets an education in a new country. She finds someone she can maybe have a nice family or relationship with. And then the life just carries on in a certain way. Yeah, like Ajahn Brahm always says, good, bad, who knows? Is this really bad, this war? Well, whether it is bad or not depends on how you relate to it. If you relate to the war in the right way, it may not be so bad. It could even have a positive outcome. And then when you come from the spiritual point of view, from a Buddhist point of view, you realize that my future actually does not depend so much on the world outside. What it really depends on is the world inside, is how I live. If I live well, if I live with kindness, if I live with care, if I live with compassion, if I look at the war in Ukraine and I understand this is the nature of the world, there's so much suffering in the world, compassion is the right attitude to have. We are all stuck in this together. Yeah, there is no way out. It's just the way the world operates. It creates so much suffering all the time. The right approach is to have compassion for these people, to help out, to develop the good qualities within. And if we use our understanding of the world outside, understanding that to actually build up good qualities within, then we are creating our future. Because our future depends on what we build up inside, not so much on what happens outside. Why is that? Well, the reason is because if you build up a sense of happiness inside, actually the world outside becomes kind of irrelevant, because you have this reservoir. Yeah, you have something that makes you resilient to what happens outside. And the more we build up the inner happiness inside, the more resilient we are for what happens outside. The more peace you have, the more compassion you have, the more in this very life makes you resilient. So next time there is a problem, you have that inner thing already within you. You can look at the external world, you can see the problems in the external world, and you can say, yes, it is a little bit of suffering, but actually it is only a small part compared to what I experience, because I have developed all of these good qualities within myself. And of course, that is only in the short run. But in the long run, when it comes to the idea of rebirth, then those qualities are even more important. Yeah, that is when really the payoff for living well is so enormous. And then you can say, all of those wars and those problems I had in my life, actually they are small compared to the outcome, the payback I get from living well and living in the right way. In the long run, what really makes my future is how I live now. And when you understand this, and when you think like this in your meditation practice, it is extraordinarily powerful, because it means that you know that it is what I do now in my meditation. If I close my eyes, if I become peaceful, if I have a state of metta in my meditation, that is where I build my future. Because these good qualities are what create the future in return, both in this life, but even more so in future lives. But all the world outside, that world which I love to think about, actually, that is not really important at all. That is only going to have a very slight significance for what my life is like in the future. And once you get this right, once you start to understand what creates the future, what makes your life really worthwhile and creates happiness, once you get that, it becomes very easy to let go of the world outside and focus on the qualities within, because this is where the future is made. So this is the idea of right view. This is the idea of thinking in the right way, understanding that the future comes not from the external world, but it comes from what we're doing right now. And then you let go of the world. Then you focus on the meditation. Then the metta, the compassion, all of these things become possible. Why? Because you know that is what is important, and everything else actually is very much secondary. So I'm going to continue where we left off. And I was talking about not hoping for the future, because when you stop thinking about the world being your future, and you know that it is how you live now that matters for your future, then when you meditate, you go to the meditation, because that is where you make the future. It is in meditation that you make good karma. It is in meditation that we build up good qualities. It's in meditation that we find a little bit of peace that makes it possible for us to be more kind in our lives, because we feel more balanced, we feel more at ease within, and then we also have more time for other people, and we have more time for being kind to others around us. So it is a very powerful way of learning how to let go of the world. But let us talk a little bit about the past as well, yeah, because the past is also a problem. Sometimes you can think about yourself, you think that, oh, in the past I was more happy. Yeah, in the past things were so good. In the past my life was better than it is now, or now I'm getting old, my body is falling apart. Oh, I wish I was young again. I had more strength in the body. My eyesight was better, and all of these kind of things. Yeah, and you may think about the past in this way, and this is a way of being attached to the past, essentially. And many people have this problem where you are attached to the past in a certain way. And one of the ways that we sometimes attach to the past, and I have noticed that with people, is that often they have like a photo album. I guess these days we don't have photo albums anymore, but in the old days people had photo albums, and they would flick through the pictures of the past, and they think, oh, what a wonderful holiday that was. Oh no, these people have died already. And you see these people who died a long time ago, you were with them on a holiday or whatever, and then you feel a sense of almost like regret, a longing for the past. And of course, these photo albums, everyone is always happy. Yeah, when you take a picture of someone, you always say, smile to the people, because you want a nice picture. And then you keep it for the future. And then in the future, you look back, you think, oh, the past was so happy. Yeah, everything was so good. And then we forget that those photo albums, they're not telling you the truth. They're only telling you one side of the story. They're telling you the side when everyone is supposed to smile for the picture. The photo albums, the pictures of the past, they are lying to us. It is not the truth. We're buying into this idea that there was something there in the past that actually was much better than it really was. So burn those photo albums. Yeah, get rid of them, because they lie to you. They're not telling you the truth. And I think people would be far better off by burning the photo albums and not thinking about the past in this way than holding on to an image of the past that actually is not even remotely true to the reality. So in this way, you start to understand that our idea of the past, even if you don't have a photo album, even if you don't watch the pictures of the past, our idea of the past is always distorted. We always remember the things that we want to remember. We remember the situations that were, especially we tend to remember the situations that are good. Or sometimes if we had some trauma in the past, we remember the situations that are bad. But we tend to focus on certain extremes of our experience, and we know it is not really realistic. Yeah, so we need to let go of the past. It is finished. It is over. We don't really know anymore what it was like. The past is just a faint recollection in our mind. It's a memory, and that memory cannot really be trusted. So one of the ways of dealing with the past and also dealing with the future and also dealing with the present is to overcome attachment a little bit more, because all of these things are really just attachments in one way or another. We are attached to the past, we hold on to those things, or we are attached to the future because we have some idea of what the future is going to be like, or we have attachments right now in the present. We're holding on to whatever it is that we're holding on to right now in the present. Yeah, so everywhere across the board, attachment is a big problem. So when we let go of attachments in our life, what exactly is it that we are doing? Well, what we are doing is the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. This is what Nekama Sankappa is about. Nekappa means to relinquish. Yeah, it means to let go of things. Yeah, Nekama is the opposite of the sensory existence, holding on to things in the world. So by having the intention of Nekama, the intention of renunciation, which is like giving up, that is what non-attachment is about. And people often think that the idea of nekama sankappa, the intention of renunciation, they think it is something very profound. And it can be very profound, but it can also be quite simple. The beginning of nekama sankappa is just attaching less to the world around us. And as you attach less to the world around you, you're actually doing a little bit of renunciation. Yeah, so that's really all you have to do, learning how to attach a little bit less. And as you do that, then this is the beginning of renouncing things of the world. So how can we think about the world in such a way that we can do less attachment? Yeah, sometimes you can hear Buddhists say that, oh, I must not be so attached because attachment is against the Buddhist idea. Good Buddhists are not really attached. But as with so many things on the Buddhist path, we need to have a method. We need to have a way of thinking. We need to have the right view, yeah, to be able to let go. Because if you just say, I shouldn't be attached, well, it doesn't really help, because even though you shouldn't be attached, you will still be attached, because you need a method to actually work this out. And one way of helping with non-attachment is to actually look at those attachments in a broader perspective. Yeah, look at things from the point of view of the past and the future, and then try to see what these things we attach to really are. Are they really substantial? Do they really have any real essence? We know that they are impermanent, so if they are impermanent, why do we attach so much to things that are impermanent? It's like asking for trouble. Yeah, it's like saying, please, may I suffer? Please give me suffering. That's what we're saying, because we are attaching to things. We know they are impermanent. Then, of course, you're asking for suffering. So why do we ask for so much suffering? Well, one reason we ask for so much suffering is because we don't really fully appreciate how impermanent these things are. So how can we grasp this impermanence in a more profound way? This is one of the questions that we need to ask. And one of the ways of doing that, which I think becomes quite obvious once you start to think about it, is to look at your life in a broader perspective. And one of the things that I have sometimes done, sometimes you go back to places you lived a long time ago, maybe a decade ago or 2 decades ago or 3 or 4 decades ago, and you go back and you look at those places. You look at the house that maybe you owned. You look at people who were your friends, friends a long time ago, yeah? And you go back to that place and you look at it and you wonder what happened. It is so changed. It is no longer the same that it was 30, 40 years ago. Yeah. Was I really attached to this place? Was I attached to this home? Was I attached to these people? And it's almost as if you can, when you go back to those places, it is very hard to recognize them and to understand why you had that attachment that you had a long time ago, because things have changed so much. And you start to feel that these things are actually quite empty here. There isn't any real essence to these things. Yeah, there's nothing there that you should really attach to. And if you think into the future, it's a similar kind of thing. Yeah, you know that maybe in 10 or 20 years' time, something will be quite different in your life. And when you look back at the life you have now, some of the people in your life may be dead in 20 years' time. The place you live may be a different one. So you will look back on the life you had now, and you will ask yourself, why was I so attached to what existed 20, 30 years ago, when everything is so changed? And you start to understand the emptiness even of the attachments that you have now. They're not real. They're not things that you can hold on to. These are very uncertain. And this becomes even more powerful. And this is where the idea of rebirth comes in again. You can see I'm talking about right view, and I'm leaving out the ideas of rebirth and karma to a large extent. And the reason I'm leaving them out is because very often they are theoretical. They are too far away. They're not things we can really relate to directly. But once you start to thinking about right view in a more natural sense that I'm doing now, you start to see that rebirth actually also relates to that. So rebirth is like coming in the back door, if you like. I'm not using it immediately, but it still affects how we think about these things. So if you think about your past life, yeah? I was saying before, you go back maybe 30, 40 years to how you were viewing things 30, 40 years ago, but go back to your past life. Now, if you go back to your past life, what you will know is that in that past life too, you were attached to things. In that past life, you had a family. In that past life, you had maybe a husband or a wife. In that past life, you had children, maybe. You had parents, for sure. Yeah, everyone has parents. You had a community around you. Maybe you were a Buddhist. Maybe you were living in a certain place. You had all of these attachments. And in your past life, those things were just as important to you as the things you have now are in this life. But what happened to all of those things? What do they mean to you now? They mean nothing. They are completely empty. Yeah, and you start to wonder, why was I so attached to those things in the past life when they are so empty, when they pass so quickly, when they are so incredibly impermanent, then they are gone, completely gone. I can't even remember those things anymore. I have no idea what they even were. They are empty. There's nothing to them. There's nothing there. And then you start to realize that actually the things in my present life are similar. Because when I get reborn again into a future life, then there will be new things that I'm attached to. Can you imagine attaching to things in a future life? You will be attached to a different husband, a different wife, different children, different friends, a different house. Isn't that weird? And all the things that you have now will be completely gone. They will be meaningless. They will be pointless to you in a future life. From the point of view of the future, all the things you have now will be gone. They will be meaningless. And so it is that we cannot carry on always attaching to new things. Moving from one life to the next one, we are forced to give up our old attachments. We grieve. We are sad. Sometimes we cry because we have to give up these things. It can be very painful to give up your attachments. And then you get reborn, and then you grasp on to new attachments. And then you are forced again to give up those attachments because you die again. And then you grasp onto new ones. And every time we do this, what we are attaching to is something that actually is empty. There is nothing there to attach to. It passes so quickly. Before you know it, it is gone. So if you start to think about your attachments in this very life, in this way, as this empty thing, yeah, which is always, can never be held on to, which is always moving on. And if you look back at it from the future, you start to wonder, why on earth was I attached to these things? Actually, they don't have any inherent meaning. They don't have any inherent purpose. And by thinking of the world in this way, what happens is that you start to let go a little bit, because you know that these things are not worthy of attachment. There's nothing there that is really can be held on to. And when you do that, the nekama, the renunciation is happening right there within you right now. And I'm sure each one of you who is listening to this, you know that there are times in your life when you have more attachment. There are other times when you feel less attachment. Sometimes attachment can be very strong. Yeah? And that gives you an idea. When you are free of some of those attachments, you feel more free. You feel more independent. You feel more your own agent in the world. And this is a way of just gradually encouraging that movement towards greater detachment, where you are more free, where you are more independent. So when you eventually come to your death's bed and everything has to go in this world, you are ready because you are independent from the things in this world. So this is how the idea of not attaching to the future, not attaching to the past, not even attaching to what you have now, how it actually leads towards meditation. Yeah, it leads to a giving up of these things. It leads to a rejection of things that are not really worthy of being attached to. And in this way, you can come back to the meditation, let the world be, and then focus on those things that actually are important. Because there is one thing that you do take with you. Yeah, there is one thing that you can attach to a little bit. And what is that thing that you can attach to? Well, that is your good conduct. It is your kindness. It is your generosity, your compassion. Because remember, the Buddha always said that you are the owner of your karma. So when you are attaching to these good qualities inside of you, you are attaching to something higher. You're attaching to something which leads you in the right direction, and you're letting go of those things that are problematic. Yeah, the things in the world that never take you where you want to go. So the idea of attachment here is that you grab a rung, a higher rung, yeah, and you use that higher rung to let go of the lower rungs. And as you do that, you can kind of lift yourself up out of the quagmire, out of the problems of the world, and then you will be heading in the right direction. And then when you attach to kindness, when you attach to care, when you attach to compassion, when you attach to understanding people in the world in the right way, then you have something that you actually do take with you into the future. These other qualities actually do go with you. So these qualities are much more real than the things in the world. They are real because they are internal to you. They are internal, they come with your mind. And because they come with your mind, they are also carried with you into the future as a consequence. So in that sense, they are much more real. Let go of the world outside. Focus on the qualities within. Yeah, this is exactly what meditation is about. And this is exactly what you're seeing here in this verse from the Bhaddeka Ratta Sutta. So, give up the past, give up the future. Yeah, don't hope for the future. If you hope for the future, you're going to think about it. Don't run back to the past because you are attached to it. Because what is past is left behind, and the future has not arrived. Future hasn't arrived, so it's a waste of time thinking about it. But also, if you want to create a good future, it is the wrong way to go about creating that by thinking about it. Thinking about it never gives a wrong future, never gives a good future. It is letting go that gives you a good future, because then you are developing the good qualities. So this are just a few ways of thinking about the past and the future. And please just, these are things or thoughts that you really need to develop in your own life, because as you develop them, they become kind of your way of dealing with the world, yeah, your way of learning to think about the world in the right way. And when they become your way of thinking about it, when you know that this is true, that is when it becomes powerful. So let's go on to the next verse. The next verse says that, I'm going to stay verse number 2. Yes, please go back again, Lai. Yeah. And phenomena in the present are clearly seen in every case. Knowing this, foster it, unfaltering, unshakable. So here is this idea that when you give up all of this attachment, attachment whether it's to the past or the future, or even to the present, well, then you stay in the present. Yeah, you hang out in the present. The phenomena of the present here are the Pachupanna Dhamma, it is called in the Pali language. And this is the basically what is happening right here and right now. And they are clearly seen in every case. The Pali here is vipassati, and this is related to the idea of vipassana. Yeah, it is the idea of seeing things clearly. And when we talk about seeing things clearly, which I think is a very good translation of vipassana, by the way, sometimes we call it insight, but I think insight is too elevated. It is often more basic than that. It's just the ability to see the world in the right way. Yeah, so to do that, initially, there's many levels to seeing things in the right way. So first of all, when you give up the past and the future, some of the things that you see in the present are the problems. Yeah, you start to see the hindrances, you start to see the attachments that you have, you start to see the things that block you from being peaceful, you start to see the flaws in your conduct, perhaps your sila, and all of these things. So giving up the past and the future is just a very preliminary way of being able to be in the present. Yeah. So a very simple way of understanding the seeing things clearly in the present. It begins with understanding your own situation. Don't make these things too complicated. Don't make them too hard to fathom, yeah, to like call it vipassana meditation and you want to have insight into the three characteristics. I will talk about this later also, but remember the easy stages of this, yeah, the preliminary stages of these things. The preliminary stages of these things are just understanding some very simple things about what is happening inside of you. Do I get angry very easily? And if I do get angry, who is it that I get angry with? Where are these problems? Do I have strong desires anywhere? Well, if I have strong desires, well, how can I give up these things? What do I desire anyway? Does it make any sense, this kind of desires? And as you learn to see the world in the way I was suggesting before, you give up some of those desires because you see they're actually useless. It don't really get me anywhere. Yeah. And then there is the attachments in your life. You start to see those clearly as well, as I was saying before. So this is really often the initial part. And this is often like an everyday ability to see things clearly as you go through your everyday life. Yeah, the purification of the mind, moving it toward more wholesome qualities, having more compassion in the world. Yeah, seeing the news on the TV, seeing the wars going on, and then feeling compassion for people because you know it's just suffering here. Yeah, this is seeing these things clearly and rightly in the present, developing good qualities, abandoning the bad ones. So this is like part of right effort. Yeah, all of this we were talking about now is in a sense part of right effort. And you may say that, well, I just said it was right view. Now I'm saying it is right effort. So what is it? Is it right view or is it right effort? Please be clear, yeah? Tell us the truth. We don't want to hear clearly what is going on. Are you one thing or is it the other? And the idea is that right effort and right view are very closely related to each other. It's one of those interesting things that you can also find in the suttas. Yeah, and one of the suttas that talk about this is the sutta in Majjhima Nikaya, middle-length sayings, 117. It's called the Maha Chatarisaka Sutta, the Great 40. And in that sutta, it says that to have right view, you have to have right effort. Yeah, right effort is one of the aspects of getting right view. Why is that the case? Well, because right view requires you to reflect about the world. Right view requires you to reflect about your experience, your immediate experience. It requires you to reflect on the suttas. It requires you to connect your experience with what the suttas are saying. Then you get right view. Right view is not something which is just there. Right view is not something you can just say, I believe in rebirth, now I have right view. It is not as simple as that. We need to put in the effort for right view to arise. Gradually, you straighten out your view. Gradually, you come closer to the way the Buddha was thinking. And very often it is quite simple. Yeah, it is the understanding of not, as I've just been talking about, holding on to the past, having hopes for the future, the defilements in the present moment, how to overcome them, how to understand anger and ill will in the right way, how to have a very simple sense of letting go and renunciation by giving up your attachments. This is that kind of right view. But to understand this deeply, you have to reflect about it. You have to say, yeah, this actually makes sense. And when it starts to make sense to you, you think, yeah, does it make sense? You think, yeah, it makes sense. This is actually real, yeah. then it has a powerful effect on you. It has an emotional effect, and things that have an emotional effect, they become a force for your practice, because we are driven by emotions. It is emotions that matter in our life. When you feel strongly about something, when you are inspired to work hard or to do something, that is when you have success. Emotions are what drive us. And to have those emotions, you have to have that right view. To have that right view, you have to have the effort to really understand what is going on. And then when you understand it, then these things start to happen. Right view, right effort coming together. So you clearly see, by clearly seeing, you are making the effort to understand things in the right way, and then the right view becomes established as a consequence. So all of these things have to come together in this way. Then we will have some degree of success.